Welcome to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast, where every week, Kirsten and Jeanne dive into the essential topics to fuel your business growth. From copywriting to course creation, mindset to video marketing, they've got you covered. Tune in for expert guest interviews on all things marketing and business, and learn how to work on your business, not just in it. So, get ready to unlock your business potential and take it to the next level.
So today I'm really excited because we're going to talk about demystifying money, because I know a lot of entrepreneurs out there have trouble or have struggles with money. And so we're going to talk about that today. I'm excited to introduce our guest is Misty Lynch. She is a CFP. Her company is Soundview Financial Advisors. So welcome, Misty. We're thrilled to have you on the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me on the show. I'm looking forward to chatting with you.
Yeah, Misty, I'm not quite sure how you and I met, but I was actually a guest on your podcast. And so I'm not really sure where we originally connected, but I'm excited to have this conversation with you today because as a business coach and a mortgage person who saw a lot of people's tax returns and knew a lot about business finances, I think people are so afraid of their money, right? They start a business and, figuring out what to charge people and setting their prices and all of those things around money can be scary. So I'm excited to just have some great conversation around money and some tips that people can do to further their business and have more security financially in their business.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of us, before we're entrepreneurs, we probably work somewhere where they tell us what you're going to get paid and what the job is. And so it's really clear what we need to do and what the deal is. But then when you go to being an entrepreneur, you're in charge of, like you said, pricing, cash flow, taxes, all these other things that might not have been something that you were introduced to before that. So it can be a real, trial by fire sometimes for new entrepreneurs to figure out that end of it, as well as the making money part, which is usually what they go into business to do.
What's the first thing you tell people about cash flow?
Cash flow is interesting because I think a lot of times people kind of think budgeting or anything like that is a kind of a trigger word. And I think it's just important. You have to monitor your cash flow regularly in business. There's going to be money coming in and money going out. It costs money to run a business in most cases. Even if you have low overhead and you're doing consulting calls on a computer, there's always still things that you need to consider. And so I think using, there's lots of tools out there. There's QuickBooks or Xero. There's things you could use to start to help you keep track of the in and outs. And this is really important, especially, a lot of times we like to bury our head in the sand if we don't feel like we're where we should be, or maybe we don't want to see that, there was a lot of money going out at first as I got this business up and running, when in fact, that's actually pretty normal. You might need lending. Some people, there's lots of different ways to start a business. And so I think just being aware of where you want to get to is really going to come down to being very aware of what you're spending, what you need to bring on in order to be successful, and then just having that clear picture so you could see if if the business is an expensive hobby or if it's really a business where you're making money and can start to pay yourself.
For sure. And it's funny because I always think about accounting is tracking what you've already done, right? That money's spent, you can't make any decisions. But when you think about budgeting, and I do think people think it's a dirty word, but planning for how you're going to spend the money in the future.
Yeah.
Like, are you going to leave some money in the business account because you want to buy a piece of equipment or maybe a vehicle that belongs to the company or whatever it looks like? Are you going to leave money in the account for that for the future? Or are you going to take all the money as income? And I don't think enough business owners really sit down and think about how they want to spend their money. And I feel like it's so powerful when you do, but I think most people, they're lucky if they just get their bookkeeping done and forget about planning for the future. So you actually talk to people a lot about that, don't you?
I do. And I think that having a cash reserve is really helpful. Sometimes there's going to be slow periods in business. And I think this is something I experienced when I was a child because my father owned his own business and we would have feast or famine. Money would come in and we would be good. And then we would go very long periods without him getting a job or getting paid. And he was a smart man. He was talented. It was just the way business was. It was very cyclical for him. And so it was interesting because I always thought that way, that I don't want to live like this. It's too stressful. At first, I thought I was just going to get a normal job and never, ever go near the world of entrepreneurship. And that changed. But I do think that having that budget where you maybe can know what it costs to run your business on the leanest month. And then if you make more than that, having some set aside in reserves for those periods so it's not so painful, it's not so scary, because a lot of times a lot of businesses fail because they run out of money. And so if you can kind of plan for maybe the summers are slow for you, maybe the winters are, all the businesses can be different, but usually you could pick up on some patterns. If you can plan for those with some cash reserves, I think it just makes it feel a little bit less stressful. And that I think will be better again for your customers and your clients, because when you're stressed out trying to make a sale because you don't know if you could pay the bills next month, that comes through. It's almost impossible to ignore it. So if you can kind of keep things calm and kind of know what's ahead, so it's not so scary when the phone stops ringing or anything like that, because you know you'll be able to pick it up in fall or whenever, that just kind of, it's just a more peaceful way to run your business than just scrambling at the end of each quarter.
So it's just interesting to have that conversation about planning even your goals around the flows of your business, the cycles of when you're really busy and when you're not.
Yeah, I think that's such a great point. And I think because if we plan for that and we know, then we might be able to look at the money we have in our business and say, okay, for those 2 months, that's when I'm going to be maybe reviewing certain things, seeing if I still need these tools. Maybe I'll be getting more certifications or education in something that I want to learn. And you kind of, if you have a plan ahead of how you're going to use your time and your resources, then I think it doesn't feel like panic, because that's just how our brains are wired. Why is the money not coming in? What am I doing wrong? And your brain will tell you a million things that you're doing wrong and why you're terrible and no one wants to work with you. But even though 6 months ago you knew that this was coming. So I think being able to plan ahead and say, I knew this was coming. I had a 10-month goal. I'm going to use this time to really, clean house and figure out, maybe do some process or, operations and see what's doing well, what I can improve. I think our brain just kind of likes to know what our plan is, and that'll keep us on track.
Yeah, I love how you talked about looking at taking the time when you have the time to look at what you're spending your money on. Because I know even for us, we took some time and said, okay, what if we subscribe to, and it's usually for us, we tried a software, we got a free trial. And then it just kept going. Or, something that you just didn't think of that you signed up for 6 months ago. So I think that's a great point.
Yeah. And I love canceling things. I really do. Because you're right. We sign up for a lot of things. And there's my space of finance. There's some really cool tools out there. There's some really interesting technology. There's all these systems and tracking. But then there's some that I'm just like, oh, I don't use that much anymore. But then sometimes most businesses, and maybe your own, is set up so it's very easy to pay you. So maybe you're on auto enroll, or you're on there. It's just going to continue going until you say otherwise. And I don't think people understand that canceling things feels almost as good as spending money sometimes, because you're like, I did something that is helpful. Now I can direct this somewhere else or into my own pocket if I want to increase my income. And so I think it's really good, because when we're busy, that's not the priority. But when you do have those times, or you block off time to do that, even if it's once a month or once a quarter, you might be able to find some money and put it back where it belongs.
I love that. I think people think it's always big moves, but if you're constantly controlling the small expenses, because I feel like the money kind of leaks out drip by drip. It's not usually just overflowing and rushing out quickly. And so you don't notice it, right? So the next thing you like to talk to people about is planning for taxes and having a tax strategy.
Yeah. I think taxes, and this is something that all business owners are going to learn. It's either health insurance or taxes or one of the above, that you're going to have to be like, wow, I got to figure this out. So yeah, taxes are usually one of the biggest expenses for small business owners. There's not, all the tax planning is really done internally. The IRS isn't going to come help you out and be like, hey, you might benefit from doing these few things in your business. They don't care. So I think it's really important. One of the things about knowing your books, one of the first investments I made was in a bookkeeper. That's not where I wanted to spend my time so much. But being able to do that, to, start paying quarterly, paying your quarterly tax, doing these things so you're not just hit hard at tax time, is very important. And so I think those are things that business owners can also do, but a lot of times they're just not sure how or where to start. So I think if you have a good CPA, a good accountant in that relationship, I think that can be very, very helpful. And a lot of accountants are busy. I will say that there's a lot of accountants it's a field that's kind of shrinking. So I think if you have a relationship, or through your network, if you can meet with somebody who has some time to actually talk strategy with you, that is such a big investment to make. There's a lot of different things to consider. So finding a pro is helpful.
I like that. Best you consult with somebody who knows if it's legal or not. But I love how you outsourced your bookkeeping first, because that's exactly what I did. And it took It took so much anxiety and pressure off my shoulders to just say, here's my receipts, take care of it. Because the guilt of just watching them pile up was awful. And it actually, I want to say it impeded on like some of my creativity and some of my, thinking about how we were going to move forward with marketing and things, because it was like that pressure, that guilt for not wanting to do that.
Yeah, all of those tasks, they come with a mental load. And so I think there's certain things that I might really enjoy doing and know that I'm never going to outsource at any point in my business, because this is just where I like to be. And then there's other things that are kind of on your list. And even if you don't have any money to outsource yet, you can always start that list and say, once I get to this point, this is what I want to unload. Maybe it's something in operations, maybe it's bookkeeping, anything. And then just a virtual assistant, whatever it is that you might need that might free up some of your time for that creativity or that space to spend more time working on things that you enjoy. You can always have that as a goal. And that's where I think the budgeting helps, because you might say, yeah, I'm at that point where I can hire somebody, or I can outsource something to a contractor. And like you said, it just kind of takes that stress. That's not my thing anymore. So you can move forward, which is, it's a really good feeling, but it might not be day one.
So here's how controlling we are, or I am. So we actually have a bookkeeper because, we outsource to the Philippines and we help people, hire marketing virtual assistants overseas. So we have a bookkeeper in the Philippines who's on our team and takes care of our bookkeeping. And we meet with her once a month to go over, the reconcile statements, go over where everything's spent. But then I still use youneedabudget.com, which is a budgeting software, which Jeanne and I both use for our personal finances. And I still have a business budget set up. So even though everything's going into QuickBooks, I still like having the budgeting software because it allows me to plan. For whatever reason, QuickBooks just overwhelms my brain. And the simple budgeting software just makes it very clear for me to think, okay, well, these are the expenses we have coming up. We have a lot of things we pay annually. It just helps me to manage cash flow. And also just to feel like we can make decisions. If a great opportunity comes along, we can actually meet with each other, look at the budget, look at the plan, and say, yes, it's a good time for us to do this. Or although we'd love to take advantage of this great opportunity, cash flow wise, it doesn't make sense. I just feel so empowered to have that information. And I will tell most business owners, because more of them are a little more like Jeanne. I like doing the numbers. She doesn't really like doing the numbers, but if you can find something simple like youneedabudget.com, try something like that to help you just set up a personal budget and a business budget. And I think a lot of people think it is restrictive. I find it to be like total freedom because it's information. That's all it is. It's information that allows us to decide how we are going to spend our money. And a lot of times people spend their money and then they regret things that they purchased because it wasn't the right time to buy that, or it wasn't the best investment for them to make personally or in their business. So for any of you out there, please embrace budgeting. That would be my number one request, to please look into that. And I know that you can help them with that as well, right?
Yeah, I think one thing that I see, which is even different than people who spend more at the wrong time. A lot of people don't know the numbers. And so they feel like, no, I can't do that. No, I can't invest in that. No, I can't afford that. Personally, business-wise, across the board. And a lot of times they could. It's just really your brain is going to be scanning for danger and problems. And so if you don't have that in front of you, you might miss out on real estate opportunities, business opportunities, vacations. I see people who then get to the point where they're retired or working with me, and they could have spent a lot more. And now I'll show them how much they could spend from now to like age 95. And it's kind of unfortunate. They might have been able to spend a little bit more, a little bit more comfortably, but they really didn't know. And we're going to default to it's probably a bad idea.
And you don't want to live your life with regret. Get to the point where you could have taken the family vacations or done the things like that. That's awesome. Your next principle is investing in your business and yourself. How do you help people with that?
Yeah, so I think that I'm somebody who's always liked learning. I've always liked school. And I think that, I saw kind of, even with my father's business, he knew what he could do. But then when there would be really slow times, he'd almost have to figure out, okay, what is the market now? What do people need right now? And so there'd be times where he'd be sitting out on the porch, reading. He was reading books and, studying certain things at the time. And so everyone's like, why don't you just get a job? Why don't you just go do that? But I'm like, no, this is what business owners have to do. They have to figure out, okay, things have changed. And the ones that don't keep up with things like technology or things like, the current trends or needs, they're not going to do well because they're going to eventually either be underpriced or they're not going to, have the what people are looking for. So I think that if you can always kind of be a leader in your business, kind of be out in the forefront thinking, okay, what's coming next? What are people looking for? Whether you own a store or whether you're an engineer, whatever, like what's coming at us, and trying to really spend some time investing in your own brain. That's what got you to where you are today anyway. So I think that could be really, really useful. Or it might be, look, this is where I've decided I am not interested in this anymore. And maybe, maybe I need an exit strategy. And so that's fine too. It's just really understanding kind of, because, business changes. It has its own lifespan, it's constantly evolving. And I think people need to as well. Training, going to some conferences, learning what people are talking about now. Because we're all kind of isolated. We're in our own little worlds after a while. So I think that can be something that is a valuable thing to spend your dollars on, whether it's your company or whether it's a therapist or whatever you need to invest in for your brain to kind of help you feel like you're there.
So true. I think most entrepreneurs love learning, right? And I know we have to sometimes say, okay, we've got to stop learning and actually do more work, because it's, we love taking on new things and learning new things. And so I think it's a good balance.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's a lot of times where people, maybe I have to learn more before I can go out there and sell, or I have to be better at this or get this designation. And I think sometimes that's us just trying to avoid having to put ourselves out there, maybe hear no. We'll do for that to protect ourselves. But I do think in business, it is good to kind of, stay engaged with it, stay up to date, and take care of yourself as well.
I love this. This has been fantastic, Misty. So before we wrap up, I was going to just ask you, if somebody hadn't yet tackled their money, what would you say the first thing they should do right now is?
I think the first thing that they should do is awareness, I think, is important. And also just lose the shame and the judgment. It is not helpful to say, oh my God, I can't believe I spent this on coffee or this. And I noticed during COVID that changed, because I used to talk to people who'd be like, oh my God, I spent so much money at restaurants. Oh my God, I spent so much money on travel. I shouldn't have done that. And it's like, then when they couldn't, they're like, well, I'm sure glad I did that. And I'm glad I did that. But I think awareness is important. There are going to be some things maybe that you're spending money on in your business or personally where you might say that doesn't feel great. I don't use that. That's not important to me. So that could be a helpful way. And then, starting to cancel those subscriptions. Maybe you find things, and that just gives your brain proof that you are good with money, that you're making smart decisions, that you've gone ahead and okay, you've got everything out on a spreadsheet. So even if you are not where you want to be, you know exactly what this interest rate is here. You know what this is here. And that organization can just kind of calm the chaos that's going on in your head. And then you can start thinking about, okay, now what do I want to do next? And just, give yourself, we all have made financial mistakes, every single one of us. And so I think it's just important to kind of let that part go and say, I might have made mistakes, but now what do I want to do next with it? And organization, using a tool, using apps, like you mentioned, You Need a Budget is fantastic. There's plenty of others. Some people do great with a pen and paper. Some people like a spreadsheet. Doesn't matter. Just get it out of your brain, out in front of you. So then you can start really kind of being in control of what you do next.
Great
That's
advice.
Perfect. So, Misty, if people want to get a hold of you because they're like, oh my gosh, she's speaking my language, but I know she can help me, tell us the best way for them to reach out to you.
Sure. So my website, mistylynch.com, has a lot of resources that could link you to my business, Soundview Financial, if you're looking for an investment advisor or a financial planner to work with you individually. Or if you'd like to, get a copy of my book, Demystifying Money, or listen to episodes of my podcasts, ones that you've guested on as well, you can find that all at mistylynch.com. And I'm on social media at Misty Lynch CFP. Pretty easy to find.
Awesome. We'll put all that in the show notes. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode and you are ready to leverage video marketing on all online platforms, or maybe even start your own video podcast, then you need to check out the Done For You and Done With You program at themarketingvaadvantage.com and take your business to the next level.